Hello, Kathy Caprino here. I'm really excited to share with you that on March 17th at noon Eastern, I am giving a 90-minute free webinar training all about how to successfully manage your job search and your career growth in uncertain times. I am going to tell you everything I know that I can share in 90 minutes about interview prep, how to identify jobs that you want, how to vet work cultures that you'll be a great fit in, how to use LinkedIn, how to network, how to build a personal brand. So if you are considering job search or in the middle of it, or you want to build a happier, better, more rewarding career, I hope you'll join me. It's free, nothing to lose and a lot to gain. Check the link below and do sign up soon because there's a limited number of live slots. So I'll see you there. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Finding Brave. Kathy Caprino here. I am so excited to be with our guest today. So excited. You know, I love to tell little stories about how I've met the wonderful guests I have on. And our guest today, Michael Stallard. First of all, thank you for taking the time in your beautiful home in Connecticut. And I know you're crashingly busy, Mike, but I want to tell everybody just how we met. And, you know, sometimes the way you meet someone and their generosity and kindness and openness just stays with you forever. And that is Mike to me. So we were talking, Mike, a little earlier, I think it might be even 10 years ago, that a wonderful co-friend of ours introduced us. And I didn't have anything going on at that point, really. I think I said I'm a coach, but I had just left being a therapist. And I wrote you and you said, come on down, let's have coffee at a Starbucks in Connecticut. And, you know, I'll never forget that. Your generosity. And this is the way you are, taking time for people. And it seems to me you're never looking at what you can get back. You're just giving. Is that how you describe it, Mike? You just give.
Well, you know, there's a joy in giving, I think. And I heard good things about you from this friend and, you know, a trusted friend.
Yeah.
So I knew you were special, Kathy.
Oh,
and it
how
was just
kind.
our conversation was nice. And I think you had a book published already, I believe.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah.
So that would have been 2008, Breakdown Breakthrough.
Okay, right. Yeah, it was around that time. So yeah, it's
So I
been a
guess I had
while.
something going on,
Yeah.
a little something. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful. And your advice and your continual support, it means the world to me. Thank you. So that's my little story, but I want to tell you about Mike. And we are talking about remote work, rising stress, and the critical need for connection. And just before we came on, Mike was sharing some things I think we all need to understand about what today and the stresses that we have and the isolation and the depression, what it really does to us. And you know, the antidote to that is connection. But a lot of us don't know how to build it and how to foster it. So that's where Mike comes in. So let me tell you about Mike. Michael, I need my glasses. Michael Stallard is an author, keynote speaker, workshop leader on how leaders create and maintain cultures of connection that help individuals, teams, and organizations thrive for a sustained period of time. He's the co-founder and president of the Connection Culture Group, a leadership training and consulting firm. And Michael's recent clients, I had not known this till I read this list, have included Costco, Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, Turner Construction, Qualcomm, U.S. Air Force, and the Yale-New Haven Health organization. Texas Christian University founded the TCU Center for Connection Culture based on Michael's work. Wow. And Mike is the primary author of The Connection Culture, which is a book you just don't want to miss. And it's now in its second edition, along with Fired Up and Burnt Out, your second book. Connection Culture was recently named the best of the best books at Get Abstract. That's a high praise, isn't it? And Mike recently launched a popular online course with LinkedIn Learning titled Creating a Connection Culture. And we're going to link to all of these things because they're really not to be missed. But Mike, it's like I have you over for dinner. I want to pick your prodigious brain and ask a lot about, let's start here. we obviously we're in a world today where things are so uncertain. We're scared for our health. We're scared for our loved ones. We're remote working. But can you talk about what this stress and anxiety and exhaustion, what it really means in our lives? What's going on here? Tell us more so we can understand it from a deeper level.
Yeah, I think, Kathy, that, we're all feeling it. One effect is just exhaustion. Our environment has changed. And, those positive interactions we had when we were out in the community, we didn't have to wear face masks. Those actually, Barbara Fredrickson's research at the University of North Carolina, Broaden and Build, it's called. It shows that those little interactions really have an effect on our resilience, on our attitude, on our future joy and happiness. So we're missing a lot of those things right now, and we feel it. I know oftentimes by the afternoon, I'm exhausted and I need to take a little nap. Now I'm a little older, so that I can get
I hear you. I'm right there with you.
But when you get deeper into what's actually happening from a biology standpoint,
Yeah.
it really comes down to three factors. Number one, stress is high. And the data shows us that the American Psychological Association has done some good research recently, and it shows that 80% of American adults report that they're feeling a lot of stress from the pandemic, just fear of contracting COVID. So those are very high numbers. So stress is high, and it was already high before the pandemic for different reasons, but it's even higher now. And then secondly, loneliness was high before the pandemic. The most recent research I've seen came from Cigna, the insurance company, and they found that 61%, 3 out of 5 American adults, so the majority of adults test out as lonely.
Oh, wow.
And then we have the social isolation from the pandemic to prevent the transmission of the virus. And so those three things, stress, loneliness, social isolation. Now, loneliness means feeling alone.
Yeah.
Social isolation means you are alone. You're not around people. So
Right.
they're different. But that combination, it triggers a response in our body that we feel threatened. And it triggers what's called the stress response. And if short-term stress response can be good because it protects us, it gives us a boost of energy, adrenaline. But if we're stuck in that state, we can burn out and we don't feel as well. Actually jotted down some of the research I wanted to share just briefly, that chronic stress response, it triggers 7 responses. Number 1, it makes us feel more helpless and threatened.
Wow.
Number 2, it reduces sleep quality and self-control.
Oh.
So self-control, it affects our ability to eat healthy, to exercise, to be active. Number 3, it impairs our judgment and cognitive function. So we don't think clearly when we're in that stress response and we're lonely. It narrows our perspective so that we're less creative and we're less open-minded as a result. It makes people antisocial, so we're more likely to snap. If somebody says something irritating,
I'm laughing because I just snapped last night. I'm like, what is coming out of my mouth?
I've done that
took
too.
Kathy and replaced her with this person?
It's hard to control when we feel more stress and we're lonely. And then also, groups that are disconnected are 80% that show an 80% decline in trust and cooperation. So you can imagine the effect that would have on our work if we're working in groups.
This is what loneliness does, or
it's
stress?
A combination of loneliness and stress.
Loneliness and stress.
Definitely loneliness, but stress is an aggregating factor.
A reduction in trust.
Trust and cooperation, 80% reduction. Yeah, this is from Karen Sobel-Lejeski's research.
Great. We'll share that.
Great work on it. And then finally, and this is very relevant right now, I just did an interview for one of the big radio stations in New York on this, that we're more susceptible to the angry rants of demagogues and charlatans and conmen who they're demonizing an out group and connecting a group of people who together are demonizing an out group. And when they do that, they create this community. It provides several benefits to the people who are part of it. It's not healthy because, it's creating adversaries that, could also, they could be hostile back, of course.
Right.
But it brings a sense of meaning if
Yeah.
they're, fighting these people they believe are truly out for them.
Wow.
It creates a sense of community because they're
Right.
posting on Facebook about it. And when
There's a
they do,
togetherness, right? A
yeah,
unity.
they get 50 likes and people are sharing and people are writing comments on their posts that, give them a sense of community.
Wow.
It also, when they strike out verbally or physically, you think of the people breaking into the Capitol recently, and just if you see more and more videos that are coming out, just how violent they were and smashing windows and smashing down doors, that reduces stress on their part. Stress, they tend to be lonely, very stressed individuals. And so in striking out, it reduces their stress.
Wow.
And that's, so there's a positive emotional benefit to them, but it's not healthy because it's creating a hate group that over time, hate groups don't survive long term. They eventually implode.
And why is that?
Well, it's for several reasons. Sometimes it's because the people they're demonizing strike back
Right.
and conquer them in some cases historically. In other cases, it's because there is a failure of trust and safety for people to speak the truth to the leader who doesn't want to hear it. They have a way they see the world. They don't want to hear truth, and it causes them to make bad decisions. I think of it as, I call it knowledge traps. When you have
Hmm.
that building up in an organization where all the leaders don't want to hear truth. They just want to hear what they want to hear, and it's not safe to share the truth with them. And it's like cholesterol building up on the human body, in the human body. It eventually leads to a heart attack. But in business, we call it, or in organizations, we call it managerial failure.
That's a nice way to put it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So,
Wow.
and I would
That's a
say,
platitude.
a
I
good
mean, it's
example, current example is just how the pandemic has been handled in the US is an example of managerial failure. And we know our president wasn't very open-minded in wanting to hear people who didn't toe the party line.
right.
And so as a result, truth and fact and reality didn't get to him so that he could make the best decisions. And as a result, we see we're projected to have probably 500,000 people who have died from COVID.
Oh, this is also important. And I love your perspective. Can I throw, it might sound trivial, but I want to share this. When you were talking about stress, loneliness, and social isolation, I think there's another thing that is impacting people that you don't hear much about. And I know it's really impacting me. So because I do a lot of Zoom work, I don't feel, I feel connected, but I don't physically get the embraces and the hugs. And I saw some research recently that moms in particular are needing more physical touch. They're not getting what they need. But I think another thing that contributes to our feeling off balance and depressed is that all our lives, most of us have had experiences that punctuate the year. So it's the holidays. And when I do Christmas, this happens. I'm in a singing group, for instance. When we
Mhm.
have our concerts,
Mhm.
we come together, we rehearse, and we sing.
Mhm.
And a lot of these ways we punctuate the year define who we are.
Mhm.
And for most of us, all of those have disappeared.
Mhm.
Like, oh, every year I go to Florida with my friends who I've gone to college with 20 years ago.
Mhm.
And I think that has set us adrift, that we don't really understand ourselves the way we used to, and we don't understand the passage of time the way we used to. What do you think about that, Mike?
Well, I think that's, it's another form of connection. Certainly singing is a huge form
Oh,
of connection, right? It's a joy in your life.
right.
My wife, Katie, who's not far from us, is in a women's a cappella group,
Oh,
and
what?
Katie's been in it for 20 years now.
Wow. Oh, so you all
So,
know what it feels like to
yeah,
be a part of a group like this.
yeah, and friendships that are made. So I think all those things add up, and we those and those small things. Research shows that those small things make a difference. When
Make
we
a
know
huge difference.
the cashier at the grocery store's name, or we even just recognize them and interact with them. Around here where you and I live, we live not too far from each other.
Right.
A lot of people don't even make eye contact with cashiers at the store. And if you were doing that all day, you really just becomes a culture of indifference. So
There you
Katie and I
go.
are both really try to be intentional about just reaching out and connecting with people wherever we are, whenever we're in their presence,
Oh,
so that
that's
they don't feel we're
beautiful.
indifferent to them.
I
And it
love
makes a
that.
difference. And one of the things I love about having been in this town for 20 years is everywhere I go, I know people, and I really love that.
I
And the
love
research
that.
shows that does make a difference.
I love that. I love it. All right. Now let's do the flip side here. Let's say we're leaders, we're managers, we're running our Zoom meetings, we're doing our best, we're on Slack, writing to everybody. What do we do here, Mike? What you talk about 3 relational cultures, but tell us what we can do concretely.
Yeah,
I know you'll give us the deeper look instead of kind of
sure.
the silly platitudes
Mhm.
we read.
Yeah. So we found there are 3 types of cultures, very simple. One is the culture of control.
Mm,
That's what demagogues and
mm,
charlatans tend to want, is they want to be the boss, and they want to control everything.
mm.
And then there's the culture of indifference, where people are just so busy with tasks they don't take time to connect, and that's not healthy either. And then there's the culture of connection. And what we've seen, Kathy, and it's so fascinating to just see this in different contexts. We start the book with the story of Lin-Manuel Miranda and the team that developed the musical Hamilton. And
Wow.
it's such a wonderful story of, we go back to his growing up and how that affected him, and
Wow.
how he was very much loved by people, his family and his community. So it's natural for him. It's easy for him to love other people.
Wow.
And he just attracts talented people who want to be part of his team, his creative team,
Wow.
that ultimately ended up producing Hamilton. So the pattern we see is, we've boiled it down to a pretty simple idea that when leaders communicate a vision that unites people,
Mm,
when they care for people as individuals,
mm.
and when they give them a voice, vision, value, voice, when you
Vision,
find
value,
that
voice.
pattern. So here's a quick example. One of my favorite stores is Costco. And the people are so nice at Costco. I really love Costco.
Oh, wow.
Of course, I can wander around there for hours. I'm a
Right.
real
Of
Costco
course.
nerd. And
Didn't know that.
so Costco, I remember I was talking to Jim Sinegal, who's one of the co-founders,
Wow.
and Jim's retired now. But I said, Jim, how do you describe your culture? And he said, oh, easy. It's do the right thing. I was like, what? What does that mean?
Yeah, really.
And he said, well, it means we obey the law. We take care of our members. We take care of our employees. We respect our suppliers. And if we do all those, we reward our shareholders.
Okay.
And I
Sounds
can only
straightforward, doesn't
hope,
it?
yeah, I can only hope your listeners own Costco stock, because it
Wow.
has been one of the best performing stocks in the entire stock market, and wildly successful. But what you see is, there's a sense of pride at Costco that they do the right thing. And
Mm,
so when they've discovered vendors who don't meet their standards, and if they can't find someone who does, they'll build their own, because they feel like, we have our reputation is we take care of our members. We care, we protect them. We make sure that our products are safe, our
mm,
food products, et cetera. They're really a trustworthy company.
mm.
And so there's a sense of pride in the organization that they will do the right thing. Second, they value people. And you definitely just see that in the way the leaders like Jim Sinegal and others, how they interact with people, wherever they are in the organization. It's a apprenticeship type culture, where people who have more responsibility are mentoring and apprenticing people who are younger and have less responsibility, so they can learn and grow. And, Wall Street's always giving Costco a hard time. Wall Street feels like they pay their employees too much, and they're too
Too much.
generous with benefits. But they have a 95% retention rate, which is multiples of some people in the industry. I mean, it's the envy of all their competitors, is they attract people and keep them for a long time, including their managers.
Mm,
And, they have high level of employee engagement. I remember the third part, the voice part. I was speaking
mm,
at their annual managers meeting where they had all their warehouse managers from all around the world into Seattle.
mm.
I was speaking at the big convention center downtown. And I was there during the morning before I spoke. And they played all these little videos, Kathy, of people all around the world who had come up with an idea to improve their service to the members, to employees, to improve their efficiency, whatever. It was some way to improve the organization. They captured it in a video and they showed it to all their managers worldwide. And they showed video after video after video. And so
Of
it
the
made me
new idea
realize,
being implemented,
yeah,
or
well, it was just a short summary of the idea presented by the person who came up with the idea and an estimate of the impact. And so it gave, they were sharing all these ideas and they were giving people a voice and celebrating people expressing their opinions and ideas that made a difference
how
in the
beautiful.
organization.
How beautiful.
And so it just shows, it's no surprise that, year after year, they're one of the top rated large company employers in the US. And they just have a culture that I remember the head of leadership training said, well, connection, that is our culture at Costco. It just defines who we are.
I've got to ask a question here. I'm dying to know. Everything you just described, there's a million words for it. There's heart, there's empathy, there's respect, there's trust that who I have hired has great ideas. There's openness to listen. It's just the most beautiful, signs of great leadership.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about this individual who, you were just mentioning and interviewed, do you think great leaders are born? Do you think he was a leader from, age 6 when he was at a lemonade stand selling? What do you think? Because you've worked with so many leaders who need work and so many leaders who are just inspirations. What do you think?
I think it's largely shaped through their experiences in life.
Really?
But there is research that shows we do inherit some of our personality attributes, including how social our parents and grandparents were. If they were lonely, we would inherit some of that. So whether we live our lives in ways that are connected or disconnected, that's going to affect our children too, and grandchildren, is what the research shows.
Wow.
But far and away, I would say it's those. And you ask a really interesting question, because it's one that I've been asking more leaders to go deeper with me and just, share what were some of the things that really, tell me the events and the people in your life who affected your ability to, care for others and lead so effectively. And, and to be honest, they're able to love other people. And you see that in Jim Sinegal. So, for example, I asked him that question, and he told me about his father, who was a coal miner and a steel worker who had been hurt in his work and had to find another occupation because of that, and just how much his dad's, care for the family affected him. And then he told this wonderful story about he had moved from the Pittsburgh area to San Diego to take a job on his uncle's fishing boat. But he had problems with seasickness, so that didn't work out so well.
That was rather short-lived.
Yeah, it didn't go so well. So a buddy told him about a job unloading mattresses at a new store called FedMart.
Wow.
And the founder of FedMart was a Jewish attorney from Brooklyn who had relocated to the West Coast. And he saw, he kind of pulled Jim under his wing after seeing his work ethic. And Jim was going to night school to get his degree. And this guy mentored him for many, many years. In fact, Jim was with him, had dinner with him just a few days before he passed away in his 90s. And one of my favorite stories Jim told me was that they were expanding into, Jim's in his 80s now. This was quite a few years ago that this story happened. They were expanding into FedMart into Dallas, and they were on the phone, Jim Sinegal and this guy, Saul Price. Katie's reminding me here.
Thanks, Katie.
Saul Price. And they were on the phone, and the architect said, guys, we got a problem here. You haven't designed bathrooms we need 2 sets of bathrooms, some for whites and some for colored people, is what the guy said. And Saul went ballistic. He said, no effing way are we going to have separate bathrooms. And Jim
What
said,
year was this? Was this in the
I
60s
don't know.
then?
I actually need to go back. It probably was probably around the time of the Voting Rights Act.
Wow.
And Jim said, well, first of all, we were all in shock. But,
To hear
Saul had,
Saul go,
here's Saul, yeah.
here he goes.
Go, whoa, and it really touched the nerve. But he also said, Saul he had a strong moral confidence about what was right and wrong.
Mm.
And that's why do the right thing. Do the right thing actually came from Saul Price.
Mm.
And then Jim paused and said, how lucky was I to work for a guy like that?
Moral, what was the word you used? Moral confidence.
Kind of a moral confidence that Saul had, and Saul was a tough character too as a businessman, I think, but
Moral
Saul really cared about
confidence.
people. He cared about people and he cared about doing the right thing. And that had such an impact on Jim Sinegal that it's really become Saul's ideas created the culture that Jim Sinegal led that has produced this wild success at Costco.
So we are shaped. We're shaped by what happens to us. We're shaped by
Yep.
our capacity to be loved and to give love.
Mm-hmm.
We're shaped by an openness to learning. Obviously, Jim was very open. He was like a sponge, it seems.
Like a sponge.
Like a sponge.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
All right,
Another
now. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So just a quick one to mention is I was speaking at Lockheed Martin Aerospace, and a former vice admiral of the Navy came up to me and said, I want to introduce you to the former chief of the Navy, Vernon Clark, because he did what you're talking about, and we saw the impact it had. And so he introduced me to Admiral Clark, who kind of kept a distance at first. I don't think he didn't like to have the spotlight shown on him, and he kind of knew I was looking to describe his leadership. But I remember I went down to the Navy Yard in DC and I met Vern and his wife Connie for dinner at the Navy Yard.
How interesting.
Just seeing Admiral Clark interact with the young Marines who guard the Navy Yard, you can just tell he loves sailors and their families and young people who serve a cause greater than self. There's a love he has there for them. He wants the best for them in their career in the Navy. And the things he did really changed the Navy's culture to become more connected and to value enlisted sailors. And they saw first-term reenlistment rise from under 20% at times all the way up to almost 60% in 18 months. So almost tripling first-term enlistment in a short time because these enlisted sailors started to feel like the Navy cared for them.
I have so much to ask. How come we have so little time? Let me ask one thing about that, and then I want to talk about what you can, teach at such a high level. How do we assess connection? And what do we concretely do? But here's my question. How would I put this? I think love from the heart is at the core of most interactions and experiences that help people thrive. And we can define love a million ways, but caring for someone with the depth of feeling and emotion and expressing it and wanting others to thrive, not being overly narcissistically worried about yourself and how you look, all of it, it goes on and on and on. Here's my question, and this is not scripted, so Mike's going to give me his honest opinion. I think there's quite a few differences between men and women at work, men and women in general, men and women as leaders. I think that if I were to say to a group of 1,000 women, female leaders, love is at the heart of connection, every head would nod. If I said that to a group of 1,000 men, I don't think every head would nod for a number of reasons. But you work with a lot of top male leaders. I work with a lot of female leaders. What do you think about that statement? Would you agree with me or push back on me?
No, I think that's true. I think a lot of men squirm when the word love is brought into the workplace. And I remember the first time that I heard love uttered by a man, and it was the vice admiral that I mentioned. Willie Moore is his name. And I was doing speaking at this offsite that his group of leaders was doing for Lockheed Aerospace. And I remember when he described his grandmother, how she was really connected to her church community. And he said, a lot of people today don't have that. And you, as their leader, may be the most important person in their life. And you have to learn how to love them. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. Now, this guy,
Cry.
Kathy, this
Vice
guy,
Admiral, Vice Admiral. Oh my
okay.
goodness.
So this isn't the one who was the chief of the Navy that I
I
introduced.
see.
So there's Vern Clark, and this is Willie Moore.
Willie Moore.
But, Willie Moore had been the oldest Navy flyer. So this is a guy who was, spent years landing aircraft on aircraft carriers, and when the aircraft carriers pitching at sea. So this guy, I wouldn't say he projected a strong masculinity, but everybody knew he was awesome, right? Everybody knew that. And for him to say that you really have to love the people you lead, people, they heard that. They heard it from him.
We're going to talk about, and I know you can talk about how to deal with people when they're expressing hostility, about politics, but I really want to go with this if you don't mind.
Sure.
If love is at the core, I want to show you that I respect you, care for you, want the best for you. What do we actually have to do differently? Pretend we're talking now to, 3,000 leaders around the world.
Mm-hmm.
If they're listening to this podcast, this is finding brave. Knowing that we need to access more love and demonstrate it is not going to be a big shock to this audience. But can you tell us how? Can you help us? I mean, I'm guessing it's an internal job first. I mean, I knew as a therapist, if you don't love yourself, forget it. You can't love others. It's a mirror, but in my view, it's an internal job first. And then it's an external job. It's what you say. It's how you look at people. It's the words you use. It's the feeling. Maya Angelou saying people will forget what you said, forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Can you tell us what you think about how do we do this, Mike? How do we show it?
Well, it's hard to, I think what you said, Kathy, is right. It starts with an attitude. And it also, you have to have been loved to love others. So you can't fake that.
So what if someone's listening saying, but I didn't, I had an unhappy childhood, a narcissistic parent. What would you suggest? I'm sure you've worked with countless leaders who say, I wish I could do what you're doing, Mike, but I can't. What do you tell them?
Well, and to be loved, you have to love others. So you can take the initiative to show you care for people. Yeah. You can do that.
In other words, fill the void of your heart by how you behave to others.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't have a role model for that.
Yeah, you can still develop that. And, there are leaders I know, very senior leaders in organizations who became involved in volunteer activities where they were out serving, the poor, serving through their church. And it became a way for them to get comfortable serving others and expressing appreciation and interacting with people who, they wouldn't normally interact with. And it started to really develop their heart.
Did you suggest that for them, or they knew
I've suggested that before. Yeah, I didn't in the particular instances I'm thinking about. I didn't suggest it to them. Someone else did, but I know the effect it had. So, when we love others, we'll be loved back. And over time, and as you know, it affects our heart rhythm even, and how we sync in terms of heart rhythms with other people. So there is some biology behind all this. It's not just fuzzy
right
thinking.
Happy talk.
Yeah, not just happy talk. So, and as we learn to think the best of others, when we learn to become comfortable affirming them, when we become comfortable looking for ways to serve them, then they respond, and that connects us. Wow. And that's beautiful. When people want to follow you as leader. Now, they want to see that you're competent too, but when you have the competence and that character, those connecting character strengths that unite you with other people, that's when they want to follow you, because they know that you're for them.
Oh, beautiful. I do want to say, sometimes what pops into my head is what I think some listeners might say that pushes against what we're saying. And that's great, because then I get to say it and I hear what you think. But what I do want to emphasize here is when we say love, when we say connection, We don't mean weak. We don't mean necessarily soft. We don't mean we're a pushover. We don't mean we don't speak powerfully and confidently. We don't mean that. I don't mean that anyway. So, for instance, I have a wonderful team of 4, and one of my beloved tech manager said, I would do anything for you, she said. And that doesn't mean I'm all sweetness and a, little fuzzy rabbit. Sometimes, sometimes I have to say, I have to push deadlines. I have to say, hey, this fell down and I really want to understand what we can do. So I want people not to think, ugh, I can't be soft like that. What do you think, Mike, when I say that?
Well, that's what I love about the Connection Culture book. This sounds self-promotional, but it is, writing the stories of people like Lin-Manuel Miranda, who have such a high expectation for perfection.
Right.
And Tom Cale, the director, they have very, very high standards. Or the rock group U2, or Oprah, who we profile, or Angela Merkel, who has a phenomenal story of connection that most people don't know about, or Steph Curry. So these are super high achievers, but they're also phenomenal connectors.
There we go. So you would agree that, if people push back listening to this, definitely read this book. All of those people you mentioned are performing and functioning at an incredibly high level, and softness might not be a word anyone would think of any of those people, soft in that way of weak, vulnerable, although vulnerability is an important part of connecting, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they care for people and they care for results because their work is affecting people. It's like Admiral Clark, his attitude was, the Navy is not going to fail on my watch. And this
there's
is a
a
guy
toughness there. There's a mental and emotional
fortitude.
fortitude.
There was a saying in the Navy, is this fun yet? Like somebody would come off landing a aircraft on an aircraft carrier when it's pitching at sea, and they would say, hey, you having fun yet? And Admiral Clark says, I don't want to ever hear that again. He kind of told the whole Navy. It was a part of their culture where people were sharing that all the time. And he said, what we do isn't fun per se. It's what we do is important. We're defending freedom and the greatest country in the world. It's, we spend months away from our loved ones.
Stop
we
making
put
fun the
ourselves
barometer of success. I mean, we
So-
should enjoy it and love it and be rewarded and of course, but are we having fun is a little bit the wrong focus, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, we're doing important work, and there's a joy in doing important work together when we respect each other and support each other. And he had a real sense of pride that, we're leading the best Navy in the history of humankind. We can project power to any corner of the world in a very short time. Very few navies could do that. And so he transformed the Navy. It's phenomenal what he accomplished, but I wouldn't call him. He definitely loves sailors and their families. But he was not going to let the Navy fail on his, some of the, like Don Rumsfeld, who's a pretty tough character, if you remember him, praised Admiral Clark as having a huge impact on the Navy that'll last for years and decades to come, because he wanted the Navy to be its very best. And he knew that to bring out the best in the Navy, you have to bring out the best in every sailor.
Love it. All right, give us, I know I've kept you way too long. Maybe this is a 2-part series, but one more question, Mike. Yeah. What else? We're not maybe running the Navy, but we're running our small organization or our small team, and it's all fractured, and that people are struggling. Give us one more strategy, a specific tactic or approach. What can we do?
Well, I think right now in this environment we're in, and it looks like from the research, Kathy, that I'm seeing, that we're going to be in this pandemic environment through most of this year, and probably toward the end, as the vaccine gets out, it's going to take time. And so just a few things that I've been sharing with people is, number one, you can't give what you don't have. So you have to take care of yourself, number one, because if you're exhausted, you're not going to be good at connecting with people. You're going to be short and cranky. Right? You're going to have a short
do I know what you mean?
And you'll be cranky. And so, number one, we have to take care of ourselves. Never worry alone. It's really important when we worry and ruminate and lose sleep over things. it can put our body in that stress response state. And so all we have to do is have someone that we can share our highs and lows with every day, or we can talk through our worries with. And that has the effect of shifting brain activity to the cortex where we make rational decisions. And it quiets the amygdala where we process threats. So it makes us feel better, and it helps us make better decisions when we don't worry alone. So that's a very important one. And the third one is to serve is to live. When we look for ways to help other people, whether it's our family members, our neighbors, people in the workplace, in ways that we're really giving to them, not looking for something in return, that it produces helper's high, which boosts our positive emotions and makes us more resilient. So those are 3 simple things that we can do right now in this pandemic that will help all of us get through it.
Oh, I love your tips. I could listen to you for an hour. You have such a 10 hours, such a soothing way about you. And you really do embody this, Mike. I know you do. You're not just, sharing some nice tips. You live this. And I'm so grateful for your time. So where do people buy the book, your second edition, the best of the best book, and learn all about you, watch your LinkedIn learning? Where do we send people?
Yeah, they could go to connectionculture.com.
Great. That's it. It's all there.
That's it.
Fantastic. I can't thank you enough
Well,
for
thank you.
what you're doing.
It's always a joy to be with you.
So
Thank you for
fun.
having
I can't wait till we can all have lunch.
Me
You're
too.
only like
Have some great
5
things
minutes
for
away
you
from me now.
together.
Oh, I love it. Thank you again. And thank you, Katie, for being in the corner there in your chair.
She's waving.
All right, everybody. I'm hoping that this not only resonates, but it brings up questions like, I'm going to leave you with one. If you are worrying alone, okay, he says I shouldn't, but I don't have anybody. Reach out. Let us give you some resources. There are things you can do, communities you can join, whether they're, church or other volunteer things that are happening that will help you find your tribe. So if you're thinking, I know what they're saying is right, but I don't quite get how, we would love to hear from you. And Mike, I know you're so responsive. Can people write on LinkedIn after they see this posted? And actually this is coming out March 11th, I believe, but if people write questions and they need a little more resources, would you join me in responding there? Would that be all right?
Absolutely. They could post on LinkedIn or write me at mike@connectionculture.com.
How can you beat that? We'd love to hear from you. These are tough times. Let's face it. Even when we're surrounded by people we love and feel full, it's a rough time here. And we recognize that. And we're sending our love to you. And we hope to hear from you. All right. So everyone, thank you. Thanks again, Mike, and have an incredibly love-filled, service-filled week and a finding brave time in your life, I hope. See you next time.